العناية الغم الغم ليموم منايا وسلام ليه أهل العناية الغم الغم ليموم منايا وسلام ليه أول بداية بالأنذر القرآن آية وسلام ليه أسمع ندايا وزيل ربي دايا سلام ليه أهل العناية.
It is my great pleasure the audience welcoming you in this new episode targeting the Sudanese Sufis social role. Two episodes have been presented earlier, focusing on presenting and introducing the Sudanese Sufis in terms of the service and their contribution to the Sudanese society. So we would like to continue in the same way in this episode, and here we would like to go further in more details, presenting their efforts, their contributions that they have played in the Sudanese society. So first of all, here I would like to present and to introduce their reconciliatory roles. Since 16th century and to this day, and that is their way, Sudanese Sufis strive to fulfill their role in society by commanding the good virtues and prohibiting the vices. They were and still are concerned with solving, reconciling the disputes through their intercession role as accepted intermediaries. In this regard, arbitrary and reconciliation have had their deep roots in Sudanese Sufi heritage. To the people of Sudan, the arbitrary and reconciliation are originated. As a system, it is causeless as well, very quick, and has a great impact on the Sufis. It is preferable for its simplicity, easiness, and further back up with clear support from the Quran and the prophetic Sunnah. In addition to their ability to absorb the negative impact of the disputes of what guarantees the continuity of the settlement. In the way of the comparison of the work of the voluntary organizations and that of the Sufi orders in ending the disputes, the result had come to be in favor of the Sufis, that the Sufi orders are deep-rooted in Sudanese society, with wide extension and spreading across the countryside, where the dispute erupted around the land, ownership and pasture. In that place, the disputers present their issues before the Sufi shuyukh with satisfaction and acceptance to their ruling. The nature of the conflict issues ranges from individual, families, and even tribal ones. However, people believed that the Sufis are the protectors of the Aqidah and norms, knowing the social culture and what related to halal, what is lawful according to Sharia, and what is unlawful, haram, in terms of Sharia law, what is right and what is not, what is honor and what dishonor is. These traits were greatly magnificent and consequently work as an assistant agent, lead the way to contentment and satisfaction among the disputers. Sudan is by far the most active state when it comes to social stability and dispute settlement compared with many countries in the region. It does this through several reconciliation committees made up of a group of wise jurists The committees settle dispute in irrigation, agriculture, grazing, inheritance, and personal affairs. What I would like to point out here is that Sudanese Sufis, and from very ancient time, since the advent of Sufi orders in the country during 17th century, by the end of 16th century and the beginning of 17th century, Sufi orders, mainly the Shuyukh, played great role, by the way, in terms of addressing the social problems that used to be erupted between a person and another, between a family member with another, between society and another one, between even tribe and another tribe. So in this regard, they have their own way of solving and addressing these problems that used to be erupted from time to time. And in most cases, but in all cases, they used to be successful in that regard. And what of the point, and of the point that I would like to add before we go further in our discussion handling the Sudanese Sufi social role, I would like to say that Sufi success attributed to the nature of their discourse. I mean here, Sufi discourse from the earliest have been taken to address the social problems. So they are very concerned with addressing the society problem. The social problem is there always in their discourse. And when we come to say social discourse, I mean here social discourse that relied and based on the teachings of the Islamic religion itself and the norms that the Sudanese, the earliest Sudanese Sufis have inherited from the previous civilizations. And in this regard, Sufis always used to be successful in this concern. Popular diplomacy. Since I'm presenting the Sudanese Sufi social role, here just I would like to introduce another important factor that have played also great role in the spread of Islamic religion from a side, and at the same time consolidating the Islamic creed in the Sudanese society. So what I'm trying to say here is that popular diplomacy has its also great role. And by popular diplomacy, here just I would like to say personal or individual initiative in terms of group of men represented the Sufi doctrine, or even individual one. Together, by the way, popularly, they have contributed from their side to the spread of Islam, the dissemination of Islam, and at the same time, the consolidation of the Islamic creed in the Sudanese society. So popular diplomatic role of Sufism did not confine to its local setting. So furthermore, what I would like to handle later is that if we have taken this factor, that is the popular diplomacy, we find that the earliest messengers of the Islamic Sufi doctrine that arrived Sudan, by the way, have played their role as I mentioned. So is the nature of Islam itself had been disseminated in the country through the efforts of what is known as popular diplomacy, or sometimes they come to be called a spiritual diplomacy. A diplomacy that no harms, shun away with violence, taken the way of simplicity, taken the way of moderation and tolerance. So tolerance, moderation, and simplicity, by the way, this is the main feature that is standard as distinguished feature to the the concept of popular diplomacy or spiritual diplomacy. In this concern, Sufis used to do the function of the ambassadors in our modern society language. However, the popular or spiritual diplomacy has addressed the society aspiration, encouraging and at the same time presenting the Islamic creed in so simple, so moderate, so tolerant way. And because of this, it has its own great contribution in the spread of Islam, and at the same time in the harmony or the coexistence of the members of the society, putting in consideration that Sudan is a diverse country, and diversity, by the way, have been addressed so positively through the lens of Sufi doctrine. Example of the reconciliatory patterns, since I have presented it shortly, to give example to the conflicts that used to erupt, as I have stated, which he taken different patterns, either between individual and another individual, society with another, or even a tribe with another tribe. He just would like to cite some examples of the roles that have been successfully played by earlier Sudanese Sufis in terms of addressing the conflicts that used to be addressed or used to be erupted between the individuals in the society. So the Sufi Masid contributed to solving many social, political, and even economical problems. As a pattern, this is strongly present in Sudan compared to the countries in the region. If you have taken example here, just I would like to say Sheikh Idris al-Arbab, a very influential and well-known Qadri Sheikh, played a great role during French Sultanate. So Sheikh Idris al-Arbab has played a consolatory role when he mediated between Adlan and the French. And here just I would like to say that the famous dispute in the earliest beginning of the Sudanese modern state, I'm referring here to French Sultanate, a conflict has been erupted between the French and Abdullah. So Sheikh Idris, significant role played in mediating between Sultan Adlan and the son of Sheikh Ajib al-Manjuluk. And by the way, Sultan Adlan here represented the French sultans, and the son of Sheikh Ajib, that is referring to Sheikh Ajib al-Manjuluk. And if you have taken the historical development of the establishment of French Sultanate, we say that the establishment of this state is a matter of confederation between the two sides, the French from side and Abdullah from another side, represented in Sheikh Abdullah Jama' with Amara Dungus. So by the passing of the time, dispute have erupted between the two groups. So in that case, or in that particular context, Sheikh Idris al-Arbab had interfered and mediated between the two groups. The sons had rebelled against their father's rule and disobeyed the Sultan Adlan after he killed him, after he killed Shah Ajib al-Manjuluk. In response to Sheikh Idris' wish to make amends, reconciliation, Adlan quickly pardoned them and put them back in their former positions. So based on the reconciliation and the great reputation of the Sheikh, I mean here Sheikh Idris al-Arbab, the reconciliation between the two groups, between Sultan Adlan from a side and Abdullah from another side, have been successfully done, and by this the sons of Adlan have been back again to their former positions in the state. Another example that shown the successful role played by Sudanese Sufis in reconciliation or in the reconciliation or settlement of dispute in the society is that famous case which had been taken place in the Masjid of Sheikh Al-Abeid with Badr. So Sheikh Al-Abeid with Badr, a very famous, influential Sudanese Sufi Qadiri Sheikh, held the reconciliation between the tribes of Batahin and Shukriya after dispute and war between the two tribes lasted 6 years, from 1870 to 1876. So this is another example of a successful social role played by a Sudanese Sufi interfering in solving dispute between the segments of the Sudanese society. I'm referring here to the dispute that had been erupted between Batahin tribe and Shukriya tribe, and between the two tribes there were 7 or 6 years of fighting. So Sheikh Al-Abeid, as a great man, they perfectly managed to reconcile and interfere, making his successful mediation between the two tribes, which finally agreed to make an agreement ending the fighting, ending the conflict between the two groups. Solidarity pattern. Another feature of the Sudanese Sufi social role is the solidarity pattern. So solidarity pattern is another feature of the Sudanese Sufi social role. Strong links between Sufi orders and people of professions in the cities and in the countryside made it necessary for the orders to put solidarity at the center of their activities. These things strengthen relations between the followers of the Sufi orders and ordinary people. Some of the Sufi premises welcome the homeless and travelers to offer them shelter where they can spread or where they can spend time. So just here what I would like to say is that one of the features also come to stand as a distinction feature for Sudanese Sufis is the solidarity pattern. And the example, by the way, the reconciliatory role that played by the Sufis, in addition to the popular diplomacy that used to be followed by them, in addition to the solidarity pattern, all of these features, all of these factors, by the way, all of these elements used to be practiced inside the Sufi center. I mean here Masjid. So Masjid is the focal point in which all of these activities used to spread out in the service of the society. Following these two examples of the successful attempt that have been played by Sudanese Sufis in interfering, mediating, in ending conflict, a question here may arise. Where is the role of Sudanese Sufis in the recent conflicts, fighting and wars that erupted in the country? So in this, I would like to say, if you have taken, for example, the last and the still running on war in my country, the war of 15th of April 2023, then before that, The war that also had erupted in west of Sudan in 2003 up to the moment, a question may arise here: where is the role of Sufis? To my own readings, and as a matter of fact, historically, if you have taken the efforts and the initiatives that have been presented and introduced by Sudanese Sufis, I mean here, Sudanese Sufi Masids, in solving the Sudanese problems, mainly the recent fighting, as I told, if you have taken this initiative, always the destiny of this initiative is the failure. So here we may come to ask why it used to be always ending in failure. As I told in my readings, this is simply and precisely referring to the nature of the Islamic ruling party. That is because since the advent of the current government, the government of 1989 to the present time, the nature of the Islamic doctrine that used to be followed by Muslim Brotherhood, to my own reading, is completely different from that one of the popular Islam. I'm referring here to the nature of the Sudanese Sufi Islam. So, official Islam represented by Muslim Brotherhood since 1989 in confronting with the popular Islam that is established since 1504, to my own reading, this is the main reason that is always putting the initiative that led by Sufis in the books of failure. That is just the differences between the two readings, between the two doctrines. The doctrine of Sufis, popular Islam, Sudanese Sufi Islam, and Muslim Brotherhood Islam. The two doctrines is in collision. They are not in agreement in many issues. And one of these issues, just I would like to say that the nature of the popular Islam, Sudanese Sufi Islam, their discourse is targeting addressing the society problems and issues, while the popular or while the official Islam, the Muslim Brotherhood Islam discourse is targeting the ruling, is targeting the power, is targeting the authority. So because of this, the conflict arises. And because of this, all the initiative that used to be led by Sufis, its destination, as I told, is the failure. And regarding, or because, and despite all of the differences between the two, Sudanese Sufis from time to time, and are in charge of the social and addressing the social problem, from time to time you find them always presenting, introducing initiative. This initiative calling for the social cohesion, calling for coexistence between the different diverse elements of the society members themselves. That is because the Masid itself, as we are going to present in another episode, the Masid itself represents the center in which the different and the diverse ethnicities, the diverse tribes, the diverse Sudanese segments, all of these differences, all of these varieties, all of this diversity used to be melted inside the Sufi Masjid. So the Sufi Masjid, and because of its discourse addressing the social problem, you find inside the Masjid all walks of life, all the walks of life. So in short, I would like to conclude this area by saying the nature of the differences between the popular Islam represented in Sufis and the official Islam represented in Muslim Brotherhood doctrine, the differences between the two never help, never support Sufis to play their positive, recognizable social role in mediating, in ending the conflicts and disputes that used to erupt from time to time inside the country. And I'm referring here, since 1989, many changes have taken place inside the Sudanese society. And to my own readings, this is just referring to or back to the differences between the two nature of Islamic understanding. The nature of the popular Islam, Sufis, in 10 of the official Islams represented by Muslim Brotherhood. Drug and alcohol fighting. Another contribution of the Sudanese Sufis in addressing the social problems is that they have their own contribution in fighting the drug and alcohol at the same time. So fighting and traditional diseases such as drug addiction, for example, as a pattern, Sufi orders follow this pattern on the premises that Sufism aims to improve people's manners, fighting evil and do good. It is considered a pure social model that is averse to animosity and sin. For many people, Sufism is a final refuge away from harmful manners, including drug addiction and thefts. In the 1970s and 1980s, Sufi orders succeed in attracting killers and criminals and turning them into followers and good men in the society. So Sudanese Sufi orders played a big role in this regard. They fought drug addiction and drinking. They encouraged their followers to spend their times at the mosque where they get closer to God. According to Sudan Observer, a large number of drug addicts and those who took to drinking wine stopped doing this. And by the way, this is just back to the effort that used to be taken by Sudanese Sufis, mainly in their own residence, the Masjid. Example of the thousands and the thousands and the thousands of those wine drinkers or wine drinking, example of those men is so numerous in the literature of the Sudanese Sufis. So a lot of them have been repented and have stopped, halted, taken the wine and repented and became so pure, so pious people. Many examples, and in another episode I may come to take examples of how Sufis address this social problem. The problem of wine drinking, kahul and drug at the same time. Taking all of these measures, I'm referring here to reconciliatory role, solidarity, fighting their diseases, whether it is inner or outer diseases, Sudanese Sufis aiming behind all of this measure is to have a pure society, a society that clean in terms of well-being from social problems. Aiming behind all of this to coexistence between the diverse elements of the society. So, in this regard, their abilities to penetrate societies and the difficulty of separating these orders from tribes opens the door for these orders to play an active role in supporting stability and coexistence among different religions, even in the countries where they are active. So, and as we have presented in our earliest episode, presented Sudanese Sufis and reconciliation with the African tradition. And here, just as I mentioned before, Sudanese Sufis, those earliest comers, by the way, from the beginning they come to reconcile with a tradition that already have existed for thousands and thousands of years in the Sudanese society. So behind this reconciliation is the coexistence, the stability, and the settlement among the different and diverse segments of the society. So because of their well-known flexibility and tendency towards dialogue, Sudanese Sufis, they made their own mark on the religious peaceful coexistence, and they favor great and magnificent contributions in this regard. In the Sudan and from the ancient, they tended towards holding up with peaceful coexistence with others, and in the way of calling to Islam, you find them follow the best way. So they were and they are not. I mean, here Sudanese Sufis are not concerned about the power or sultan, as I presented shortly. That is, their main discourse feature is to address social problem. So they care not of power nor sultan. Instead, their concern is on the reconciliation among the people and getting them away to bloodshedding, taking them away from bloodshedding. Such efforts had played its positive role in disputes and conflict settlement away from internationalism, or even to take it into taking it out from the center of the masjid. So, but I think that as I will be presented also in another episode, there is a changing in the role that used to be played by a Sudanese Sufi masjid, and this is also will be another issue that will be presented in our coming episodes.